forward. Joining me now is Republican Congressman Mark Green, a former emergency room surgeon and founder and CEO of Emergency Department Staffing Company. Great to see you, Congressman. First of all, you know, we do have some video that shows that not everybody had on protective suits.
Sure.
You know, they were taken to, some of these evacuees taken to military bases. We don't have eyes on that. Whistleblowers saying that people weren't prepared. First line of defense are our health officials. What do you say?
Well, with a respiratory droplet infection, there is sort of a safe zone and there's a critical zone, a danger zone, and it's typically 3 to 6 meters. So if they were coming closer than 6 meters, I'd say to the patient, they needed to be in respiratory protection. If they weren't, then they don't. And some of those videos, when you're meeting people on a tarmac, that person that's giving direct patient care probably had some protections, and the people standing around who weren't even close to the patient, they didn't need it. I mean, we're not going to be wearing this stuff in the emergency departments. And, you know, when you go to the ER, not everybody's going to be kitted up in a Bio-4 hazard suit. So it's ridiculous to make the assertion that just because you saw a video clip, that people weren't protected.
Okay. All right. So we'll wait for the investigation to go on with that. How concerned are you at this point with the WHO raising its threat level, and how prepared? I mean, you were an emergency surgeon, emergency room surgeon. You know what it takes when someone comes in and you suspect something. Some of those hospital staffers we now know are being looked at for not just potential, but for being around a person who had coronavirus, because in fact we know she did in Northern California.
Yeah, there's a very high incidence in China right now of the healthcare workers being infected, and they actually have a pretty high mortality rate because the dose, you know, they're seeing the really sick patients. So we do need to be very careful in maintaining our health, the protection of our healthcare workers, and that might mean for all of us out in the population, we're not the ones buying the N95 masks. We should leave those to our healthcare workers, because most of this illness is going to be treated at home. You know, 80% of the people who get the disease, it's mild to moderate. Only about 20% are considered severe. You know, so our healthcare system is fantastic, Harris. You know, global war on terror, since 9/11, they're doing disaster preparedness all the time. Of course, we're, you know, thinking about a nerve agent or some kind of kinetic terrorist strike. So every hospital is prepared for this stuff. And we just need to let our healthcare workers do their job. They're gonna do great at it.
Yeah, it's, you know, the American people hear you saying how terrific and fantastic our healthcare system is, and yet it's at the heart of every political argument that goes on Capitol Hill. I know that you were in a hearing very early this morning on this very topic. Can you tell us what's coming out of Capitol Hill?
You know, the president is basically presenting the administration was presenting their plans, and they seem to be leaning very far forward in the foxhole. You know, what you're hearing from, there's a balance. There's a real balance between scaring and panicking people and making sure that the worst case possible scenario is covered. And I genuinely believe the administration, under President Trump's leadership, under Vice President Mike Pence's leadership, is doing everything possible. You know, they even called President Trump a racist because very early on he closed travel from China. Yet that's why we only have 15 cases that came into the U.S. You know, 45 of our 65 were 60 were repatriated into the United States. So we're talking a country of 330 million people, tons of travel to China, and we only have 15 cases here. I mean, that's unbelievable. And yet they're out there calling the president a racist because he closed travel early on. They're just going to be critical. The New York Times said yesterday in an article that it was the Trump virus. I mean, that's like tabloid stuff.
You know, what you talk about,
ridiculous.
though, the WHO today lists travel as one of its things, like cracking down on travel in and out of countries as one of its things. So I hear 100% of what you're saying on those very early decisions and the role that they may have played, and the cases being, the number of them, relatively low here in the United States. Dr. Green, I'll bring you back on another day, as I know you were watching this both from a medical perspective and also there on the Hill. Thank you. Why the angst about Bernie Sanders' momentum among Democrats is justified. What a new Fox News poll shows as more voters see President Trump winning a second term. The power panel will slide in.